Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Craig, and we are your hosts on this journey.
This podcast is created in partnership with Pennsylvania ASCD.
All right, good day, SEL and EDU family. It is another great day. We have an incredible guest who I am absolutely fascinated to learn from today. They happen to have a little young person who might be running about, so from time to time you might experience the just love and bliss and genius of that little person. But I just want to start with checking in with Krista. How are you holding up today?
I'm doing really well. I'll be honest, it's a Monday and I was up early. Took my bonus son to his mom's for what I think might be the last time because he has his license and his Jeep got inspected today. So I'm having like a bit of a, for 7 years, I've had these really great car rides with him, but I'm not going to lie, it's an hour of time 3 times a week. So I'm not going to miss getting up early, but I am going to miss that car time. And so I was excited how you said about young people coming in. And so we welcome I love hearing the joy of young people. And so hopefully we'll get a chance to hear our guest's little one at some point today. How are you doing, Craig?
You know what? It was crazy because today we got a little bit of rain here. I'm in Boston, just in case for those who may not know. And so we had a little rain. So people are on the slow haul through here. Yes. And I was like, I am trying to get here so I can get ready to record, and folks are taking their time. I'm like, I ain't got time for you to be looking at autumn and all the colors. I need you to move. Let's go. I got a thing to do.
Which I think is so funny because I'm sure just yesterday when the weather was nice, you were the one that was checking out autumn because it's a gorgeous, gorgeous season with all the colors. And I bet especially up in Massachusetts, it's looking awesome.
Only if you pull to the side, like just move
Point well taken.
I'm just saying. Well, we have to introduce, I guess I'll go ahead and introduce this phenom to the world. I know we are super excited to have Dr. Damion Lewis, who serves as a strategic advisor for professional learning and equity with Panorama Education. Over the past 17 years, Damion has served as an education champion in all kinds of roles. Damion has served as a program director, a section chief for ELA, World Languages, and ESL with North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. He was a high school English teacher, both at Nash Rocky Mountain Schools and Wake County Public School System. Damion has served as a consultant with North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Damion has served as a senior administrator for instructional support within the Office of Professional Learning for Wake County Public Schools. In 2020, he was named the ASCD Emerging Leader. In 2012, he won Knightdale High School Teacher of the Year, and he was also a Wake County Teacher of the Year semifinalist. Damion holds a BA in English from Elizabeth City State University, an MA in English from East Carolina University, an EDS in Educational Leadership, and an EDD in Curriculum and Instruction from Liberty University. Damion has completed a whole plethora of research centered on multicultural literature and online learning, and he is a best-selling author. It is our honor and duty to just welcome to the podcast, Dr. Damion Lewis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I almost paused though, because I was like, as you were reading that, I was like, wow, is all of that about me? Because that it doesn't sound fancy when you're living through it and going to class and doing work and taking care of kids and taking care of home. And let's not talk about student loans. So, but no, thank you. I'm excited to be here, just to connect with both of you, fellow ASCD members, and just have this dialogue around social emotional learning and all things learning.
It is our pleasure, I would say. I think that Krista is getting super geeked to go ahead and kick off.
I am. First of all, I'm like, holy cow, I love the plethora of roles that you've had in education. And I think that that serves to help you have different viewpoints and perspectives of education and what's happening. And I would love to dig into what does your role look like with Panorama Ed? And especially, how does equity fit into that? Can you make that really clear for people? Because I think sometimes there's some misconceptions out there, and I would just love to have our listeners learn more about that connection and your role.
Awesome. No problem. Well, one of the things that at Panorama, we really focus on student success. And a part of student success will be all those things when we think about the interconnected nature of MTSS, but then also, of course, social emotional learning and behavior support. So thinking about the interconnectedness between those and supporting students in my role, and I should say, in my just soon previous role, because I just moved up to in a different position supporting as team lead, but now I'll be supporting others who are doing that same work. So in a sense, my previous experiences involved working with clients who were using our products and our software and our surveys, be it with students, be it with staff, community, or a combination of the three. And in a sense, taking that perception data from those surveys and helping them to unpack that data, but to also make it fully realized within the learning environment. So when we think about equity, the great thing about social emotional learning, it's applicable to everyone. So equity is part and parcel to social emotional learning. However, we did have some clients who specifically had additional aims around equity in conjunction with social emotional learning. So supporting those and having those specific conversations around equity, what's being noted in the data that can help educators really respond to and better support students to improve that bottom line when we think about student learning outcomes, which is we always want to focus there, but we in education know that in order to get there, there's so much work that has to be done first. And a lot of times we attribute that to those good sound teaching practices that we now refer to under that umbrella of social and emotional learning. So helping people to tie those, what sometimes seems like disparate pieces, and to make sense of it in order to commit to action.
Yeah, I love that you are helping educators see how things are connected. Well, and first of all, I want to say congratulations on your new role. So we've just one more thing to add to your bio there. So that's fabulous. Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
I think there's so many great tools and programs that are out there that help educators and students and community members, like you said, understand the value of learning these skill sets because they're so important for life. And just one piece that I want to remind our listeners is that equity and understanding diversity and inclusion has always been a part of SEL. And the way that I look at it, when CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, revised and updated their 5 SEL competencies, for me, they made it really explicit. And I love that because it really, I think, provides some guideposts for educators to learn about their own identities. So, like under self awareness, it talks about cultural and linguistic and social identities and assets. But it also talks about, or not but, and it also talks about kind of unpacking your biases and your prejudices and how that might influence the way that you view the world and interact with people. And then when we take perspective taking and understanding social context and how that influences behaviors, and I could just keep going on and talking about like things that are unjust and being able to stand up for the rights of others. I really think it just provided a really solid foundation for educators to learn and grow themselves and to better interact with other people. And it's encouraging to hear you talk about the partners and the clients who want this, who acknowledge that it's so valuable for our students. And so, what does that look like as you walk them through the process of what does SEL look like? And then ways that they can ensure that they are honoring the students and the community members and really making it a holistic process where it's the school and the students and the community.
Well, I would say that there is no one set way. Of course, I think, we understand we like to use different phrases when we, describe educators. Sometimes as simple as a jack of all trades, wearing many hats, doing multiple things. And I think sometimes that's just part and parcel to what we do. And even with working with various clients, it's almost the same approach I use even in prior roles with working with different schools, different administrators, with really thinking about, first of all, thinking about what it is that is a goal and objective, be it something that's in your school improvement plan or at the district level, what's in your strategic plan. And what we've noticed, and probably what's indicative across the country, post 2020, still finding our new normal in this world of school and back in at full time. I think that people recognize that there were needs that weren't being met, not just for students, but also for their staff. And some of it, I usually, especially when I've had people that sometimes can be a little bit apprehensive about social emotional learning, they use this buzzword, this term, and they think, oh my God, I can't do this, or this isn't for me, or this is some hidden thing here. And it's just putting a mirror up to them and just saying, if you think about it, especially my teachers, if you think about what you do, if you have been successful with students, especially those students that we say sometimes are that take a little bit more time or require more of our energy and more of our support, you've been doing social emotional learning support all along. We just call it good teaching. So when I first started as a teacher, one of the first things that my mentor teacher impressed upon me was, how do you make your students feel when they come into your classroom? And if there's nothing around how you make them feel and they don't necessarily know that you care or support, they're not really going to trust you. And they may do your assignments, they may work, but those students who are already on the fence about whether or not they trust education and what you're doing, those are the students that could be left out. That's what I was reminded of. And so I always impress that back upon people, just to say, what we're doing here is giving you tools, building your skill set, and building upon knowledge that you already have. One of the things that I love reminding people of is even going back to like John Hattie's visible learning. If you look at those pieces from visible learning, there are different competencies that show that when you attend to those needs from some of those SEL competencies, you're going to have direct impact on academics. And when people see that and like, where did this data come from, this research? It came from the classroom. It came from teachers. So because this research is proving that it works, this is your research. This tool, this platform, when we're working with them at Panorama, is going to help you to respond to that. It's not necessarily changing it because you've already been doing it. And if you haven't been doing it, these are some things that you can try to do in order to see some successes where you might not have been able to see some before. Sorry, that answer was super long, but.
No, I loved it. Thank you. And I think it was very thorough, and we agree with we agree with, that a lot of our teachers are already doing these pieces. I do think it's honoring what you have been doing and maybe make it a little more explicit for students, because sometimes they're not quite understanding that you're working on these other skills while you're working on academics as well. And we're always growing and, in our practice and trying to get better. And so I love the fact that you have a platform and that you work with people and provide that support to help them feel confident and competent.
I would, I'm gonna, shift a little bit. I know just a little bit about, Dr. Lewis in regards to, his fascination with gaming. And so and I also know a large comic, anime passion that if the audience was here with us, they could see some of that displayed in the background. But, I had an opportunity myself. So, we have this really lovely question that I'm gonna throw at you, to see how you feel. What do you consider to be your SEL superpower?
Oh, wow.
You're not messing, Craig. You came right out of the gate with that one.
Well, I tried to set it up. So, the background inspired me.
I would say I immediately was going with the answer. I was like, maybe it's more like a Professor X, X-Men, and it's more like telepathy, but I can't read minds. But on that same wavelength, when I think about that power of telepathy, sometimes as educators, what we need is really something that we as people just all need. We need a bit of empathy, being able to really just take in what it is that we think we're perceiving, think we're hearing, think we're understanding as it relates to individuals and people, and then be able to sit in it a little bit to be able to gain some understanding, or sometimes just to recognize, as I sit in this, I know that I have no knowledge, no skills to be able to respond to this, but that means that now that I know that, I can go get help so that I can help and support others. So when I think about that superpower, I would guess I was going to say an empath, in the sense that trying to feel what others are feeling or in their energy. And when I think about teasing through data relative to social emotional learning, relative to equity, relative to academics, sometimes that's the missing piece. And that's where, when you think about the MTSS process, that's where we're trying to connect. What's missing here? We see the grades, we see your performance here, we have your SEL data, but something's missing. And so sometimes I would feel that if we had more empathy, sometimes you would be able to start weaving through the cracks and recognizing that if you have a kid who is showing up for school every day, they're showing up every day, but they're not doing any work, but they're not causing any behavior issues. Why is that? If they were going to come to school every day, not do work, but not cause any issues, is there some other disconnect? Is something else going on? But if we don't address that, or at least try to sit in that, those students fall through the cracks. And so, and that's what we don't want.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. Oh, there's that young person, who just showed up. How awesome. I am curious how, some folks may not even know that you're a dad, and you are Instagram famous, like y'all are just such a beautiful family.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. For parents, I know you're a parent now, and a husband, and as you think about the relationships, even with families, because families are the first teachers. What are some of the things you are learning as a newer dad, and all of the things that you're talking to schools, talking to educators, talking to leaders, how is that resonating when you actually are making those connections?
No, I was going to say in there, and just to give voice to that, my son has started a new fascination with trying to hide in things that he can't really
It
fit
is
into.
so cute.
So
I can't help it. I'm
oh
sorry.
My goodness. No, you're fine.
On his head, and then he starts to talk, and he's like, boom. It's adorable.
He's just figuring that out. But I was going to say, one of the things that has, thinking about what I do now for work primarily, it's transformed even the way that I would say that I respond and react, not only to my kids, but especially to family, and being more considerate of just those pieces. One of the things that I found, it's a little funny now, I grew up really loving Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I'm going to do a name drop real quick, because we're talking about people Instagram famous and Twitter famous and all of that. But another fellow ASCD member, Phil Eccles, who told me years ago when we worked together, and when I was working under him, I reported to him when I worked at Wake County originally. And we were talking about this show, Daniel Tiger. I was like, oh yeah, Daniel Tiger from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I never watched it. I didn't have kids. Now I watch Daniel Tiger. And I know Daniel Tiger, and even some of the lessons and the things that are built in there around social emotional learning support, but also in the guise of within the classroom, at home with each other, how to treat people. I think that's been the most transformative thing for me as a dad, thinking about not only how I interact with my husband and how we treat our kids, but then also how we interact with our family members and people. I think sometimes we forget that we teach people how to respond and treat us. The sad thing is, when I think about it in the classroom atmosphere, be it as a professional, as a teacher, principal, or even as a student, sometimes we forget about that, and we don't, in a sense, illustrate or share with people how to treat us. And sometimes there's no space for it. It's like we would want to, but there's no space for it. And I think this goes back to something that Krista touched on earlier about being very explicit about why we're doing this, why we're investing time in. And I think we also have to do that for fellow adults, because we have to make it a safe space for them to begin. We're adults, and what we've been taught is once you go into that professional realm, you somewhat put a wall up and you put a block up. And what I'm starting to notice post-pandemic is the recognition that no, we can't do that. If we're going to really collaborate, work well together, do these tasks that require all of the energy coming from different people, we have to be thinking more along what is it that you need as a person first, which means that I have to be open to recognizing that that's a real vital need and not just some superfluous thing that that's been thrown out in a buzzword.
I think one of the pieces that I'm really grabbing onto here, and in relationship to Phil Eccles, because a couple years ago, and it was kind of in the beginning of the pandemic, he posted something on Twitter that said he was about to go into a meeting with a group of educators, and before he walked through that door, he thought, "Who do they need me to be when I walk in that room?" And he didn't mean to not be his authentic self. What he meant is, what supports do they need? How can I be my best self? And I think when we do the work that we do here as an executive director, as a lead advisor of professional learning for Panorama, it's knowing that we have needs, and that to for wellness and self-care, but also how can we be the best version of ourselves for other people. And I know that Craig and I have often talked about that as well, and the fact that I'm hearing that from you as well, like, how can I show up for other people and say, hey, we're going to collaborate, we're going to work in these teams. I'm curious, where do you go to, like, what do you do to fill your cup and your bucket so that you can continue to give to other people? I think this has been a common thread that Craig and I have asked leaders who really have made a huge impact on those around them. And so we'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and where do you turn?
I would say first I first turn inward. I think that one of the things that when I do lead sessions that I share early on in my session is that you can't pour from an empty bucket. So you have to be filled first before you attempt to pour into anyone else. So whenever you feel like your batteries are low, your bucket is empty, you need to pause and you need to take care of yourself first. So one of the things that I try to really, and I would say I've been more cognizant of it since 2020. I was doing it before, but I've been more cognizant of it now, and being able to recognize, oh, right now I am very low here. When I start thinking about my abilities, my capacity, or if I'm just overworked, addressing that first before moving on. In addition to that, I think it's just filling yourself with those good things, be it good knowledge, be it good people, being able to have those conversations around people, having someone to be a coach to you, to be a listening ear, sometimes to be able to provide you context and feedback on things that you might think that you have a good handle of, but they can sometimes on the outside help you to see differently. And being open to, I think it's being open to change and understanding that no one comes to this with a finite level of expertise and that's where they stay. It's always in flux. It's always constant. And I think if you remain open to that, you not only make yourself ideal to support others, but you're always going to be learning and gaining new things. And again, going back to Phil, that's one of the things that I've always loved about him, and just even addressing it and thinking about it, it's always a continual thing.
Thank you. At this point in time, what have you what are you seeing as you're talking to schools across the nation, the globe? I know that your work touches not, an entire globe. What are some of the top, two, maybe top three challenges that you're hearing from schools and leaders about the work that they're trying to manage or navigate or trying to launch?
Mm-hmm. I can speak more so when I think about, I'm just coming back, but prior to going on parental leave, and so it would have been last school year, one of the things that was, I would say, almost universally coming up for those clients who were looking into it was just really thinking about a sense of connectedness, community, safety. I think that when we kept we had to stay at home, and then even when schools reopened, to varying degrees, there was a sense of safety that had eroded for a lot of students. There was a sense of safety that was acknowledged that may never have been there for a lot of adults. I think those were some things universally that we saw across the board, you know, with a lot of clients repeating over and over. And so, like, even when we start to think about some of those different competencies, I know that sense of belonging is one that was critical, that we touched on a lot, and we recognize that, especially even for our adults, one that needed a lot of work. One of the things that a lot of administrators that we've had conversations around with thinking about leading their teachers and staff, is them being able to take stock and recognize that all these supports and the things that they're doing for their students, but they weren't doing them for their teachers. And so sometimes what it was is that there were 3 different experiences going on in the building. The principal is experiencing learning in that building in one way and managing tasks. The teachers are experiencing it another way, and the students see something totally different. What is that? That's chaos. That's confusion. But it also means that we're not going to see optimal student outcomes, which is what we want to do. So I think that bringing this back to kind of finalize or put a bow on this answer, is really just thinking about all those pieces that were highlighted during the pandemic. And thankfully, with doing the surveys, with just asking it for those people, because I want to also make sure I address this in a way where I didn't always work for Panorama, but thinking about those schools, those districts, those teachers who don't use that software or don't even survey their students, but getting to know and find out what is really going on with those at those 3 different levels. What's going on in the brains of principals, what's going on in the brains of your adult leaders, teachers, and what's going on in the brains of your students, to see where we need to find some common ground and a path to move forward.
I'm that's really resonating, and I appreciate that, taking different people's perspectives and ensuring that there's an alignment there, and that people are whatever the vision is moving forward, that everybody's working towards that vision together. And like you said, there's not confusion or chaos. And part of that involves collecting the stories, the perspectives, listening, leaning in. And I'd like to shift just a little bit, because one of the things that Craig said early on is that you are a co-author of a book that is called Letters to Brothers. And I pulled it up here, and I just wanted to read this piece out loud. And are you okay if I ask a question about that and some
Sure.
information? Because you talk about safety and inclusion of our students. But I'm going to be honest, as a white woman, I was very fearful for my friends who are Black and brown men back in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, and thinking, what can I do to bring an awareness to what's happening? And your book here, I'm looking at Amazon, it says the nation continues to witness the discrimination, inequality, mistreatment, and marginalization of Black men. What can we do to preserve ourselves? In this book, one will find the answer to the aforementioned question. Meet 44 authentic Black men who have shared words of perseverance, wisdom, hope, and achievement. The writings will cultivate a deeper sense of self-worth, build character, and set a standard of living for every Black male in whose hands it is placed. I would love to hear a little bit about some of the stories that you heard and how that helped people create a path, as you said, to keep moving forward.
Yes, I was going to say, which probably was one of the most transformative experiences, I would say, of my life, like having the opportunity to participate in the writing of that book, the writing and the editing of that book with my fellow co-authors. And so in a sense, when we set out, I know that our lead writer, our lead author, Jason Mahoney, when he set out to work on this book, it was around ensuring that different perspectives about the Black male experiences, but in an uplifting manner, were highlighted. And that's why we allowed authors who came in who shared, be it some wrote poems, some wrote short letters, some wrote full-on chapters like I did, but all on different areas to seek to empower, highlight, and help strengthen, I guess you would say, the psyche of the male. And in a sense, it is written for, in a sense, with the Black male in mind, but it was open to any male, because I think that in particular for myself, my chapter was called The Sleeve. And I took that from, like I said, former English teacher. I took that from Othello. And I'll briefly share that quote, but Iago says, "It is as sure as you are, Rodrigo. Were I a Moor, I would not be Iago. In following him, I follow but myself. Heaven is my judge, not I for love and duty, but seeming so, for my peculiar end. For when my outward action doth demonstrate the native act and figure of my heart, and compliment extern, 'tis not long after, but I will wear my heart upon my sleeve, for dolls to peck at. I am not what I am." And I chose that quote for those last two lines in particular, but I will wear my heart upon my sleeve, for dolls to peck at. I am not what I am. I think that even in that phrase, it highlights especially the life of men, but especially for men of color, and having to always put out, to go back to the quote from Phil, but to put out an image that might not be exactly who you are, to not be who you truly are, but knowing that you can't be who you truly are because society or what have you has relegated that this is the way that you're supposed to present yourself. And so, like, my chapter was really encouraging men to think about who you are, be your true self. Because when we are not our true selves, we rob people of the opportunity to get to know the person that was created for a purpose. I think we're all individuals for a reason. We all are different for a reason. But when we assimilate, you rob people of those unique qualities, those unique characteristics. And so, with speaking about that book, I think that's really the aim there, in highlighting the uniqueness of all of the writers, but then also hoping that when the reader picks up the book, they might find pieces of themselves in those different chapters, or they might find one chapter that really resonates with them, the situation they're currently in, or what they've gone through, and knowing that somebody else has been able to persevere here.
Well, thank you. I find myself speechless. We don't, for men and men of color, I've been in a number of spaces, but I'll speak for myself. Many times, at least in education, we are expected to carry the world on our back. And, from my father, a Vietnam veteran, he didn't share a lot about his feelings, his emotions, what he carried. We don't know all of the scars. People didn't necessarily make space for him to be able to, be all of himself. And so it's still tough in 2022 to be authentic and also be safe in this America. And so, some of the things that I am really wrestling with today, I've been wrestling with for a number of years, and probably will continue, because it makes me think about Baldwin. That still rings true when we talk about the two-ness that you have to be in this America, and being Black and male, but also be a nurturer, be a builder, be a collaborator, be able to communicate and have heart, and be tough, whatever that is. And so all of that, is an incredible, I would say, badge, that we have to carry as men, especially Black men in this world. So thank you.
No, thank you for sharing that, because even with that, we as men, especially as Black men, we don't do that enough. Just be vulnerable. But like you said, it's also that thought about it being a safe space to do that.
Yeah.
So can I ask then, as someone who is white and a female and an educator, what is it that I can do, especially if we look at the teaching staff in America? It's predominantly white and female. What can we do to create that inclusive and safe space for all students, regardless of race and ethnicity and socioeconomic status and gender and sexuality? And in fact, not regardless, but and like, I don't know if that's the right word, like, not it, but embracing all of that. What can we do to create that? And so I'm looking for, and Craig, feel free to jump in here too, um, to be an ally and to be able to help create that experience.
You know what? I think that one of the things that we can all continue to do, and I think even if, like you said, if you are on the other end of that spectrum, like you said, you're a woman, a white woman, and that is indicative of a lot of classrooms. But I think that even for no matter what your cultural or ethnic background is remaining open to recognizing when there are gaps of understanding, or being able to at least sit in and know when one of your own biases is impacting your ability to provide support. And to give an example here, one of the things that I had to come to terms with when I was a teacher was that I was a Black teacher, Black male teacher, and I emphasized very heavily Black authors, Black literature, with, early on, before recognizing all my students are not Black. So it's great that I'm introducing those to, literature and things that students might not have seen, but I also have to be cognizant of my entire makeup. And so, especially when you work in environments with different cultures and different people, and that caused me to start really thinking about the multicultural aspect of my environment, my classroom, and then thinking about, well, where are my limits? And when I did have limits, going out and getting support and resources for it, i.e., having a class that was 60% 60% of my students had a background from Hispanic origin background, and recognizing that, okay, if they don't see themselves in this classroom, they're not going to want to learn anything from me. So making sure that that's represented. Or when I'm in a classroom where most of my students are female, in an honors class, that somehow scheduling was able to put all these girls in one class and you have like 3 or 4 guys, recognizing that there are some adjustments that need to be made because my audience has shifted or has changed. And vice versa, when I had a class full of males, that's right, Cooper, when I had a class full of guys like to play and act silly, I had to recognize that, okay, there's a limit here. I've never experienced this before. And I think the biggest thing is, for anyone who's wondering, where do I start? Small steps. Think about what it is that you know to be true. Those things that you don't know to be true, being okay that you don't know. Being okay to, finding safe spaces to ask those questions, but then also seeking out helpful resources and information and things that can help you. Sorry, but there is no manual or guidebook to dealing with what colonialism, or now post-colonialism, has wrought upon our society, and especially in the world of academics and education. But I think as long as we remain open and recognize that what we know now is not all the information there is, and that there's always more that we can do and know, and by remaining open, I think it allows us to really see people for people. So it might be a student living in a situation that I have no idea about, but because I don't understand it, and if I can recognize it, I gain the power to respond in a better way than if I go with an assumption and try to respond to an assumption.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful in thinking about our thinking. And there's this image that I'm thinking of called the ladder of inference. And I'm sure I see your head nodding. And I'm sure Cooper, he was agreeing with you as well while you were talking. So he's probably seen it too. And I think we'll link to that. But really thinking, and you mentioned this earlier, what I think I'm hearing, what I think I'm taking in, and not making a judgment about that, being open to exploring that further. So thank you. I don't know if Craig, you wanted to jump in on that one or not.
I really think Damion hit it, right on the head. The curiosity is important as you're building a relationship. And understanding where you have privilege and where you can assert that. Are there opportunities where you have the ability to share leadership? Do you have an opportunity to create platforms? Are you leveraging those platforms and spaces to make sure other voices and other perspectives are there? That you'll continue to do your own learning journey, that is not relying upon other people and other cultures. Our world is so vast and we have so many resources at our touch points. How are you continuing to understand and read and digest other narratives of other people, and how that helps to inform how you go into conversations? And again, I start with staying curious, stay curious, and I think the world will be better for that in many ways. So yeah. Well, as we come to a close, because we don't want to hold you too long. We are curious, if folks want to connect with you, what are the best ways for folks to stay connected to you?
Oh, wow. In this age of connectedness, you can definitely catch me. I say catch me. Wow, who am I right now? Did I turn 16 all of a sudden? No. They can definitely find me sometimes posting on Twitter, but usually reading other people's comments and liking and reposting. But on Twitter at Hey Dr. Damion. So again, on Twitter at Hey Dr. Damion. Also, that is also my IG handle. I try to make some parody there. You got to have some parallel structure, keep some things aligned. But then also on LinkedIn at Damion Lewis. You can find me there. And then outside of that, I do work for Panorama, and so we work with many clients across the country. So if you are looking to connect with me there, feel free to reach out, tag me to a post after listening to this podcast. If you have questions about anything that I shared, even about the book that we wrote or any other work moving forward, look for me there.
And if you want to hire Damion as a voice-over coach or to do your commercials, I think you have one of those voices that people are going to want to just keep rewinding and listening. And then rewind and then listen to you. Have you ever had somebody say that to you?
No, don't tell me that. But I used to get really excited in the classroom when I first started teaching, and whenever I had reluctant readers, and I would read to them. And I was just like, oh my goodness, high school students like for people to read to them. And one of my students was like, well, we only like for you to read because you do voices while you're reading and you bring it to life. And so it got to a point where I impressed it upon them to where, depending on the class, they would have conversations. Oh, no, I'm reading for that character, even though it wasn't a play. Like, you all, we're not reading a play. This isn't a play. But no, I want to do what you're doing. I want to do the voices. I'm like, oh, God, I've created a whole generation of readers who do this.
That's awesome. They're reading, though. But yeah, call Damion to hire him, too, for audio.
All right, SEL and EDU family. We are, slightly disappointed because I know we could keep going, but there are young people who need, their dad's attention, and so we want to make sure that
you're fine. You're fine.
But it has been an honor. It has been a pleasure to have you, Damion, on SEL and EDU podcast. We're super excited to be sharing this out with the community. Just being able to, amplify some of the gems that you share today, I'm sure are going to be great gifts to so many folks who are listening. So thank you. SEL and EDU family, we are going to be coming to you again very soon. But while you wait for the next wonderful podcast, we just want you to keep holding on dear, and we want to make sure you hold on tight. And we promise that we will stand with you quite strong in the SEL light. We love y'all. Y'all take care.